Hey, welcome back to Men Talking Mindfulness. And this is our first episode this season on Masculinity 2.0, where we're going to talk about the magic in magic mushrooms with Neil Markey and how it's helping men out there in the world and all people. But I'm really excited to have this conversation today because I'm sure a lot of you out there today are hearing a lot about psychedelic therapies. We're going to talk about mushrooms in particular, which is psilocybin, with Neil. Neil has been running Beckley Retreats, and they've been helping dozens of people over the last almost a year now to bring these psychedelic experiences through ceremony and how it's helping people in all different types of people, not just men, but veterans and everybody. So it's going to be a fun and interesting conversation today. And Neil is like a brother to John and I. We actually had the opportunity in November of last year to take part in Beckley's first retreat, and it was very insightful in so many ways, and it kind of bonded us all together in such a great way, Neil, John, and myself, and we're excited to have this conversation. So welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. John's here and Neil, and we're live.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're live, and we're going to go, we're here on YouTube, but we'll go into the other platforms here in a couple of days, and we'll go into the podcast platform next week. But, for those of you who listen to the show or watch the show, you may recognize Neil. We've had him on a few times. Once we've had him on to discuss developing trust and having each other's back. And then obviously, as Will mentioned there before, we did do a psychedelic retreat in Costa Rica, and we actually did a couple of episodes there. And that retreat was Neil's brainchild. And, what he's doing now is a lot of what that kind of gave birth to, if you will. And now we've got him here today to discuss the magic mushrooms and why that is important and what that can do for you. But for those who haven't had a chance to listen to those former episodes, a little bit about Neil real quick. Former Army Ranger. Wow, man. Army disgusts me so much that I can't even let it go off my tongue. Obviously just getting tongue-tied, but yeah, so Army Ranger, got his MBA from Columbia, went on to do some consulting at McKinsey, then went on to get his mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher certification, founded Maryland Mindfulness, and then went on to found Evolutio, and that company was focused on giving human beings the knowledge, tools, transformative. Wow, I need to calm down. I need that grounding practice. Transformative experiences and community support to create meaningful change. And then since then, Evolutio has been acquired by Beckley Retreats. And Beckley Retreats, Neil is now the CEO of Beckley Retreats, and Beckley Retreats offers transformative well-being programs combining indigenous wisdom and plant-based therapies with modern psychotherapy and human performance science. Boom. So there you go.
Hey, Neil.
Hey, guys.
Hey, welcome, Neil.
See ya. I love doing this stuff with you guys.
It's nice, good stuff, man.
Work with friends.
Yes, indeed. It feels there's a different feel to this episode, man. When it is just all friends, like
all buddies.
Don't get me wrong, I love our guests. I love all our guests, but when it's just the three of us kind of shooting the shit about stuff that we care about and stuff that we know is helpful to others, there's a different feel, and I appreciate you being here with us today, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much. So should I give my background a bit, or?
Yeah. Well, we'll you know what, let's just, we're going to ground for, a couple breaths, just take a couple, like a 3-second breath check. But one thing I really enjoy about working with you, John, and having someone like Neil on the show, there's a certain like camaraderie that kind of really forms around our masculine energy in some ways. It's different. There's something about like when I only work with men, and I'm sure you experienced this in the service, it's just really, there's some beautiful things that come out when we really get raw and vulnerable and just kind of, and work from that place of authenticity as well. And it brings a big smile to my face to have this conversation with you guys today.
Right on.
Let's do that. We're going to focus up. We're going to do 3 focusing breaths. That's it. So close your eyes if you need to. Let's start with an exhale out. Empty all the way out. Big breath in. Exhale very slowly out the mouth. And feel like your body melting on those exhales. Another big breath in. Inhale, keep going. Exhale, melt on the exhale. Feel your body weighting down into the earth through your sit bones or your feet or both. So one more time, inhale. Let that go. Awesome. There we go. All right. Let's do this, gentlemen.
There you go. As simple as that, right? Just grounding with just a few breaths. And here we are.
Yep.
So Neil, let's kick it off with a little bit about your story. I mean, how did you get into what it is you're doing now? Basically, tell us over the last, 40 something years.
Yeah, it's been a windy road, but I'm in a pretty good spot now. I think it started when I was doing my undergrad at Maryland, and then September 11th happened, and that was a huge day in my life. You could actually see the smoke from the Pentagon at the top of the football stadium. And long story short, although the military had never been on my radar before, I started paying attention to what was going on in the world, and I thought we were at risk. And I ended up leaving school and enlisting for a bit, and then came back and did ROTC and went in as a lieutenant. And then went to Iraq. Was leading an infantry platoon. And by the time we got to Iraq, we had realized this weapons of mass destruction thing is everything that we had been told. And that was super challenging, because I thought that, what we had been told was accurate. And it was really hard to be there and realize we were putting people at risk, and for reasons that weren't accurate. And then I was really fortunate. It's more of a function of luck and timing than it is skill, but the stars aligned, and I got a chance to go try out for the Ranger Regiment, and I went there, and that was a cool organization. I mean, it was a busy time for the Rangers in those years, and Leroy Petrie got the Medal of Honor when I was there, and we had all the coolest weaponry and gear, and I had a lot of pride in being there. It was really something special. But there was a lot of trauma. I mean, not only were guys getting hurt overseas, but the mental health was in a pretty bad place. At one point in time, there was 3 suicides in 90 days in a pretty small unit. And, I was super fortunate. I was more of a support guy, and I was an officer, and, I had just gotten there. So like on my first Ranger deployment, a lot of the guys had been there for like 10 or 11 deployments, so it was just like intense, and it left some marks. And, I ended up getting out and was fortunate to get into Columbia for grad school, and was there. And, although I was doing well outside looking in, I was at a good school. I was getting some pretty prestigious summer internship offers at places like McKinsey and Bain. I was struggling like big time, and I was going through a divorce, and the brotherhood was gone, and the mission was gone, and I was in New York. I was a fish out of water, and I was spiraling. I was starting to isolate, and I had tried a lot of different Western might not be the right word, traditional American approaches, pills, different anti-anxiety medications. I tried every sleeping pill known to man, different antidepressants, and none of them worked, or they would work for a period of time, and then my symptoms would come back, and then the symptoms from the medications were worse than the original symptoms. It was just like this. And I was fortunate.
Could I ask you, Neil, how bad was your sleeping? If you want to just take a moment and because I know a lot of people that might be listening to this have trouble sleeping. Like, what was that like? Or what was, and then the pills and stuff, please.
Yeah, it was just, I felt like a bit of a zombie, and I think it was the pills, but it was also just my, the central nervous system, we're organisms, and you only have kind of so much like capability in the nervous system. And when you're in a traumatic environment or a high stress environment for a long period of time, basically your central nervous system just gets worn out. And then you go from fight and flight to freeze to basically complete apathy, where you don't even feel joy anymore. You just shut down. Right. And then, I mean, my sleep was, it kind of came in waves, but it was generally pretty terrible. The mind is racing, you know what I mean? And then you get in these cycles, even with over the counter stuff, where you're drinking a lot of caffeine, or you're taking some speed in the morning to get up. And then at night you're taking some NyQuil or a sleeping pill or some alcohol to try and get down. And then, I mean, you're killing your central nervous system, but it's quite common, you know? So I was in a bad place. I was in a really bad place. This was 2012. This was 10 years ago. And I met a guy, like I would say by the grace of God. I mean, it was just luck. This guy by the name of Hom Nguyen, who I still keep in touch with from time to time. He was a very seasoned meditator, and he was getting his PhD, and he was leading a mindfulness course for business leaders at Columbia. And I stumbled into that class and not really knowing what it was. You know, this was 10 years ago. It wasn't super common. And he's said this since, he saw like immediately that I was struggling, where most people were probably like, oh, Neil's doing well. He saw deep in me, and he was just a super kind man. And he kind of took me a bit under his wing, and he taught me meditation. And I mean, it was super hard at first. I remember, for those that meditate, you know, when the mind's active, the central nervous system's stimulated, it's hard to like watch your breath for like 2 consecutive breaths, you know, but I was in this state all the time, you know, and I just remember sitting and trying to count to 2, and then my mind would ping somewhere. It's just like, but I had this kind of like deep intuitive sense. I was like, I know this is good for me. And I just kept practicing, and I had luckily like the soldier's discipline, and I had tried basically everything else. So it was kind of out of desperation. I was like, well, what else am I going to do? And, and then it started to break through. It took time, but I was definitely starting to make some improvement. And then that same year,
what are those breakthroughs, if you can, like, if you want to give just a summary, like a couple of those breakthroughs, what was that experience like?
Well, it's just, you know, I tell this story a lot. I remember noticing, you know, in the mornings feeling like I was brushing my teeth. And it's like, holy shit. Like, I'm in grad school. Like, I'm not in a hurry at all, but it's my mode. I'm in this mode because I've been trained to be on high alert. And then I've had some tough experiences that have gotten me to this mode. And I just remember for the first time being like, oh my God, I'm always like this. I always feel like I'm in a race when I'm eating, when I'm with somebody. I'm always trying to figure out, I'm always kind of like on alert. And those things, it wasn't overnight, like at all, but I started to notice like a break in the dam. Like it started to, you know, get a bit better. And then that same year I had again, through this kind of network that I met that was doing meditation, had the opportunity to do psilocybin in a ceremony, but like with intention as a way to heal. Like they knew where I was coming from, and this was what it was for, where I had tried, you know, psilocybin in my youth, but it was with, you know, no intention. It was more like for fun, and it was fun. And but that was profound. You know, that was a big moment, and that kind of like opened things up. But again, it wasn't like a light switch. I wasn't like all of a sudden fixed, but that got me pointed in another direction. And then I had a handful of years where I was really dedicated to this stuff, meditation, trying different psychedelics, reading about consciousness, mental health. You know, I was absorbing this. I was really fascinated by it, and it was helping. And I was in grad school and had, you know, free time, and was able to do that. And I was definitely, you know, improving, and went on lots of different retreats, long-term meditation programs, Vipassanas, different MBSR programs. And I ended up helping Hom Nguyen with some of these mindfulness for business leaders courses, you know, over those years. And then I got out of grad school and had started a business with my brother, like a small business. And I moved home, and I ended up doing a teacher's certification in MBSR at Jefferson University. And then I was teaching meditation as like a passion kind of side thing for teaching business leaders, you know, because I had the MBA, and then was teaching veterans when I had the opportunity. Even went back to the intelligence community for like a short stint teaching people. Got to do some meditations over the phone where no one introduced themselves. I have no idea how many people were on the call, but I just was teaching. It's kind of cool.
The spooks.
Oh, geez.
And you know, I was doing all the things, you know, like well-being. There's many facets to it, you know, and I was I was doing well. I had good community, my family. I was working with my brother. The work I was doing was creative, and we had good ownership. It wasn't all about the money. It was we were trying to, build cool stuff, and I was spending a lot of time in nature. I was meditating a lot, and my symptoms were, not fully gone. I remember I still had a lot of issue driving by traffic in the road. You get that shit. But I was doing a lot better. And then I had been deferring this job offer with McKinsey and Company because I wanted to work on this business with my brother, and they had let me defer it a couple times. And I got to the next kind of deferral cycle, and I went to the partner that was kind of managing me as an incoming potential associate. And I was like, hey, can I do another deferral? Business is going great with my bro. He's like, Neil, no, like we're not gonna be your permanent backup plan. So hey, we love you, but like it's now or we wish you the best. And I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. And I ended up going. I wanted to see behind the curtain. In the business world, that organization gets put on this like pedestal, and I was like, I gotta see what it's all about. And then I ended up going, and that was a new chapter, and it was a mixed bag, like many things are. Part of me loved it. It was so intellectually stimulating. There's really intelligent people there, and highly motivated people. And I'm a lower middle class kid from Frederick, Maryland, right? And so now all of a sudden I'm in boardrooms and I'm staying in fancy hotels, and I don't know, it's cool, and you like telling people that you work at McKinsey. So I don't know, I was having some fun for a while, and I got to stand up and we're not fully stand up, but there's a partner there that is like a very well-known seasoned meditator that's written some books, and his name's Manish. But I got to work with him and a dear friend of mine, and we like formalized and stood up the internal mindfulness program at McKinsey and Company, which was like super cool, right? Like that, yeah. I loved doing that. And, I was the first consultant to teach meditation as a service offering. So I was getting to do some like really cool stuff that I was passionate about. But that was also the beginning of when my own mental health started to slip backwards, and now looking back, it's quite clear that the environment, and now it's so important for us as we, help get people to this work. It's like, environment matters. And that environment there was challenging. It was super fast paced. It was very egocentric. It was very money driven. And the reality is even if your mind is not like thinking about it on a daily basis, you might not be on a daily basis being like, hey, this work is not in alignment with me, like writing it down. But your body knows. Your body is well aware of what is happening, and if there's this misalignment, and there was a misalignment for me. And then, I start slipping back. I was there for a few years and did, well, professionally, but was starting to have some of my symptoms come back. And I ended up leaving, and then I ended up in private equity, which I would say was even more off base for me. It's just not my work. There's plenty of great people in that work, but it's just not my work. And I was just chasing money at this point, and kind of lost my way, even though I had a decent foundation. And I did that for a few years, and I got to this point where I had a very fancy title and relatively high income for a guy in his mid 30s. But was completely miserable again. And most of my symptoms, not all of them, were back from when I was in the service or getting out of the service, like this franticness. The teeth brushing thing was back, right? And
wow,
and
yeah.
I also noticed that a lot of my peers were having a lot of the same symptoms. They were in the same fight or flight cycle as veterans. Now, I'm not trying to make a comparison between, combat experience and corporate America, but there's some similarities, right? Like a challenging toxic work environment is a challenging toxic work environment. And I started to see that in my peers, and I was like, man, this stuff is everywhere. And anyway, I got to a place where I hit another rock bottom, not unlike my time in grad school, and I left. And this is when a few years ago I left, and I had been well before, I knew how to be well. It's pretty simple. You just got to like get your ego in check and make the right decisions. And I got back into meditation, and I got back into plant medicine, and I ended up in Mexico. And then I was putting programs together, simple stuff, we would meditate in the morning together. Sometimes we would do some psilocybin and then go for a hike and then meditate and just, be in nature, be with good community. And then, there was a point when I was down there where I was like, oh man, I'm watching what's going on in the world. I'm like, the world's opening up to this stuff, psychedelics, indigenous wisdom, meditation. I love it. I think it's fascinating. I know it can help people. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I started figuring out, hey, how am I going to do this as my path? And then,
wow,
serendipitously enough, when I kind of made that decision and started looking for partners, I'm like, I need some support to do this. We ended up getting connected with the Beckley Foundation and Amanda, and we can talk more about Amanda's legacy because it's incredible. And now we're doing it together, and now we're running these programs together in Jamaica, which are, this mix of, I think there's a happy medium to be had between, you can have high standards and scientific rigor, good protocols, and good safety. But you can also have some of this indigenous wisdom, right? And some of the art to it. And I think we need more of that. I think that we need to get people kind of out of the metropolitan areas and the doctor's offices, and we need to get people in groups of nature, right? I mean, I think that's a big part of it. So I think it's my life's work, and I love doing it. I love.
It's awesome work,
fortunate
man.
to be part of it.
It's awesome work, and Will and I both experienced it firsthand. And Amanda's son was even at the retreat that we were at, Rock, right?
Rock,
yeah, fantastic guy. But you kind of just said that in passing, like, oh yeah, I got connected with Amanda Fielding, blah blah blah. Like, no big deal. Tell us how that came to be, and then I guess for our listeners who may not be familiar with who she is, yes, her legacy. Let's dig into that a little bit.
I mean, since I left the corporate world and then kind of started doing this, honestly, it's been serendipitous thing after serendipitous thing, which I think is like a good signal that we're moving in the right direction.
You're in flow.
In flow. That's what it feels like. It's things are flowing. Opportunities are presenting themselves. And so when I made the decision that I wanted to kind of do this in a real way, and I wanted to find some partners, I went out and I didn't really know how to do it because I hadn't done it before, but I had a decent network, and I started talking to a lot of different VCs because they'll talk to you, and I was very disheartened in a handful of my first calls because it was very clear to me that there was a lot of interest in psychedelics from VCs, but it was not necessarily well-intentioned. I mean, it was like so clear. It's like they want to run this drug company playbook and they're going to get as much money out of it as possible. Kind of like well-being be damned, and that was very off-putting to me. It's like, I felt like I had learned my lesson. I'm not, contemptuous, but like, I'm not doing that anymore. I want to do something that's
profit first.
I want to do something that's principled. I want in 30 years, I don't want a big house and car. I want to say, wow, I did something of meaning, like that's what fills you up. That's what fills us up. And then I was in this disheartened state, and I actually reached out to a mentor of mine from Columbia University, and I was telling him this story, and he was like, well, have you even like talked to the Columbia network? He's like, I actually think one of your classmates is like, this is a bullseye for him. And one of my classmates, Dan Love, that I went to school with, I didn't know him particularly well, was a partner in the newly formed Beckley Waves, which is basically the investment arm of Beckley, of the Beckley Foundation. I mean, it's Amanda and her sons and a few other people. And
Dan was on a retreat too. The first time.
Yeah. Amazing guy, great guy. And it was kind of wild because they had been wanting to get into retreats because they saw retreats as like the right way to do this work. Like the care delivery method was right. The clinics are great, but retreats have a lot of benefits as well. And they had been looking for somebody that they thought could build a retreat business. And they had interviewed a bunch of people, and they were like, there's these amazing healers out there that are so transformative, but it's a different skill set between being a healer and a practitioner and being like an entrepreneur or like a strategist. Right. And I'm not a healer. but I think I'm a decent, entrepreneur. And so they were a bit disheartened because they couldn't find someone they thought had the right skill set. And they even had a meeting at one point where they're like, if we had it our way, it would be amazing if we could find a veteran, because veterans are leading the charge on this stuff. And it's the one bipartisan issue, and they can speak about this stuff, in a way that most can't because of the place that Americans, have veterans in their psyche. And then we got connected, and it was just like, I've been looking for you guys. And they were like, well, we've been looking for you. And it's like, okay, well, let's just do this thing together. And so that's how that came together. And then for those that don't know Amanda, I mean, you gotta look up this woman, Amanda Fielding. I mean, wow. So she was recently coined in Forbes as the queen of the psychedelic renaissance. She has a long list of just like crazy titles over the years. The Countess of Cannabis. She's British royalty. She's a countess, and she has dedicated nearly her entire life to reforming international drug policy around drugs, the ones that have benefit, and studying them and researching them, and not just having our laws be based on perceptions, but like, let's look at the data. If there's real risk, then okay, let's do that. But so she, for the last 55 years, has been like leading the charge. And what's so beautiful now is, for most of her career, she was she was a bit on the fringe. Psychedelics was on the fringe, like her and Rick Doblin, like people just thought they were a bit nuts outside of like the small circles around them. And now the entire world is like starting to open, and everybody's like, you guys were right. And it's really special to see her start to get the recognition that she's deserved. It's because of her. And there's a handful of people that have really been carrying the torch for a long time that have gotten us to kind of where we are now. Now we have more data, and we can. It's not just a bunch of hippies sitting around thinking about this stuff. There's some professionalism to it.
Well, I want to talk about that piece. Yeah, that piece there, the professionalism. Like earlier, you mentioned, you had taken mushrooms for fun when you were younger, and then fast forward, I don't know, 20 years or whatever it is, to where you're taking it as part of a retreat, and you get some healing through it. You and I and Will, we've all talked about set and setting. Can you cover that and how important that is, and what that play is within your guys' retreats?
Yeah, set and settings, very important. And some of the, psychonauts over the years have said set and settings more than 50% of the experience. So it's like, set and settings 60 or 70%, and the compound or whatever you're taking is the remaining, at where most people would probably think it's reversed. And I think that there's definitely some truth to that. You can debate the percentage, but it's significant. And set and setting is just like, it's the intention, it's where you're doing it, it's who you're doing it with, it's the ritual around it, and that's powerful. And we don't fully understand why, right? But the reality is, there's lots of things in the world, in science and physics particularly, we can get into, that we don't understand, meaning we can't draw a straight line. We can't understand the exact mechanics of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That doesn't mean it's not real. And like the common things in medicine you can see is like the placebo effect, or doctor bedside manner. I mean, study after study after study shows that, if people think they're getting a pill, that a lot of people will have some benefit just from the mindset. We don't understand how that works. We have no clue, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And it's the same with this, like, set and setting. It might feel like a bit woo or soft, but it's like, there's lots of stuff that is a bit beyond our current ability to understand, but that doesn't mean we should throw it out, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Will, I know you were going to ask something a second ago. I cut you off. I think you're muted, brother.
Yeah, I want to talk about the importance of environment, right? That's set and setting. It's like when we, what has heart math been teaching us? Like when we get together as a group of human beings, we begin to pick up on each other's heartbeats.
Yeah.
Right. And like, what is it like? What's the power of having multiple heartbeats, but also starting to, because of the ceremonial aspect of the retreat itself, like we're breathing, we're meditating, we're all kind of getting into the same vibration, if you will. Mm-hmm. And my experience with psychedelics, and not just psilocybin, but ayahuasca especially ayahuasca too, it's a heartfelt kind of plant medicine. And psilocybin was very similar in the sense of how it just leads to really, really great connections. But that connection can start by, there's a lot of breathing practices that go into your retreats as well. So you kind of create that, not just the external setting, but you're you're preparing your vessel, if you will, right on the inside, to calm down, to begin to receive, to begin to open, to access already vulnerability even before you begin to take the plant medicine.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's very, very important. And then you dive into the experience. And I like one thing that they talk about from the ceremonial aspect is opening sacred space. Right. So we begin to not just honor the spirit and the energy within us and amongst us as human beings, but also the environment that's around us, which is super important. And that's why, you if you're, doing a ceremony like in the city, you're going to have a completely different vibration, a different experience, taking it into the forest, taking it into the jungle, taking it by a lake, because even the electromagnetic frequency in those areas is lower, right? And helps us to get lower and deeper and kind of get into more of our, the loving kindness and the love that we are at our very, very core of our being.
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely.
it's yeah. And I would like to go more into, because we like to geek out on this show. What is some of the science that, because I know there's a lot of new science around this as well, with these therapies, because all the research has been or the ability to research has been taken away for numbers of years, and now it's starting to come back, and actually more research is being done. So maybe you can kind of dive into the science of this, and then what it's also doing for people would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's definitely, building. What it looks like psilocybin and some other psychedelics do in the brain is they open it up. They make it more malleable. And what you can see on fMRIs is parts of the brain that used to have low activity will have high activity, and parts of the brain that had high activity might have low activity. And then you can see some connections. There's a really famous study that was done by the Beckley Foundation that shows, have you guys seen this on the two circles, and one's normal brain, one's with psilocybin?
Yeah, you showed me all this
really
connections, right?
Yeah. And the theories there, I guess, around like anxiety and depression is that over the years through trauma, some of these like networks, some of these connections in the brain get hardwired, and then that puts us in these modes because they're just like following the path that's been worn the most. And then it looks like psilocybin kind of like opens them up and will allow some new ones to fall into place. And one of the metaphors that I think is like a good one is, by the time you get to be middle-aged, particularly, a lot of how we show up in the world is these kind of like very deep mental, emotional patterns, right? And they're really hard to change because we've been wearing them for day in, day out for a long time. And so you can think about it as like a ski mountain, and like the paths that a skier will put into a mountain. And it's really hard to cut out of those, right, once they've been worn in. But if fresh snow comes down, if you do some plants in the right way that have this capability, it's like a fresh layer of snow, and you have the opportunity to put new paths down. But there's still a tendency to go in those old paths. They're in there somewhere, right? Like, and so you do have to be mindful to try and put new pathways down. That's why the prep and the post, kind of like doing the work, is really important too, because sometimes people will get some benefit just like on its own, and you can have these really powerful mystical experiences which give people this sense of connectedness, and in and of itself it's powerful. But I think to get the most out of them, to like really optimize the benefit, you got to like do the work. You got to make habit change, and you got to do the meditation, you got to take care of yourself, you got to do some of the Western kind of psychotherapy approaches are really beneficial if you do it in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to work. The work is, it's very, we can't think of this as an easy button that we press and we're instantly healed, or we're instantly better, we're instantly more creative or more compassionate. There's a lot of work that goes into it. The compound, as you mentioned before, like with set and setting, the compound is just a piece of it. And I also want to come back to the analogy that you drew there with the snow. We had Kegan Gill on the show last week, who was a pilot who ejected at 695 miles per hour. And you met Kegan down at the 4x4x48.
Yeah.
No
And he used that same analogy last week. So it's a great
It's a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So the the compounds, what it's doing for you scientifically, it's opening up or maybe reconnecting these new neural pathways, or maybe reconnecting old ones that have maybe died or atrophied. I want to kind of tie this back to the kind of the masculinity 2.0, or the masculinity upgrade, as we've kind of coined it. What do these plant medicines do for us in that aspect, as men specifically, or hyper masculine types? What are we closed off to that these medicines are maybe opening us up to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. It's like the same logic we were just talking about. It's like we're brought up in a American society where, when we were kids, for sure, it was boys don't cry, the alpha males are the winners. And, it was this bravado kind of tough man mentality that got a lot of, that was rewarded in some sense. You know what I mean? Like it was less frequent that a guy that like was super kind and gentle and centered would get like some feedback that was positive from like our society in the United States. Right. So it was pushing people towards this other way of being. And then if you go into a even more alpha type environment, like the military or corporate America, where it's more faster, more, go harder, and then you're wearing in these pathways around that mode and that way of being. And it just, you can not even realize that you're there. You know what I mean? Like, and that, look, I don't think that masculinity is great. It's just, I don't think that there's anything wrong with masculinity or femininity. It's like, are they in balance? Is there harmony? There's like time and place for them. And I just think that, things can get out of alignment or can get, stretched a bit. And I think for myself, I mean, by the time I got out of the Ranger Regiment, I wasn't a kind. I mean, I was good to people that were very close to me, but kind of outside of that, I was pretty rough. I wasn't the kindest. I wasn't the gentlest. I wasn't the most patient. And that really, that prevents a lot of things that are really important for being a human being. It prevents like new connections. It prevents a deepness or an intimacy from between you and other people that's super limiting. And I think that's why you have, you look at some of the stats around men and loneliness and stuff in the United States. I think it's certainly part of this, right? It's because we've walled ourselves off, right? And really what we need to do is kind of like let that down and connect. But that doesn't mean you have to be like a wimp or either, right? You don't have to be like a pushover. I remember seeing leaders in the Rangers, and there were some guys that I think like got the masculinity thing right. And it was like this like fearlessness, but without arrogance. And it was this,
this like courage.
Yeah. And it was this like, it was this toughness, but it was without aggression. Like they didn't, it was measured, you know what I mean? But then there was a lot of guys that, a lot of this kind of, a lot of times from, for me included too, it comes from insecurity. So you overcompensate, you over index, and then you put these, more intense pathways in, and then you're showing up in the world as this like jerk because, right. And then you end up being pretty unhappy because you separate yourself from other people in that mode, which I did. And, I'm still trying to kind of wind all that back. And,
I feel a lot of this, the medicine itself, and tell me if I'm wrong, or please give me your input. It's like I feel the experience itself starts to dissolve those barriers, like you talked about, that gets in the way of us experiencing what people might call source, or might, our essential selves, or the core of who we are, or our heartfelt self, really. And that's
Yeah.
the source. It's like, and what through the heart, and the heart being connected to the rest of this incredible being that we are, like physically, and the spirit that's kind of an awareness that's inside of us. It's like what kind of to also speak to the courage that you're talking about. It's like we connecting to that source of love and connection, right, and compassion, right? Like that's what does the Buddha say in Vipassana? Only love, only compassion, and the psilocybin and the psychedelic experience reminds me of that, very
Mm-hmm.
much so. And I know we all experienced on the retreat too. It's like amazing to see not just the individual transformation people that are having, but part of that individual transformation comes from the communitas, the group, like kind of a hive that happens, where we also all raise in a collective courage. So we're able to really begin to objectify, some of these, the PTSD, or some of these patterns of behaviors, and some of that, the emotional roadblocks that get in our way of us being more vulnerable, being more authentic,
Yeah.
and then having the courage to sit with them a little bit longer, a little bit longer, and a little bit longer. I know, John, like on the second night in our retreat, you had that forgiveness piece, which was really big for you.
It's huge. Huge.
And it's like, and now, like, how much of that is still bothering you, if you will? You know what I mean? Is that down like 50%? Is it almost gone? You know what I mean? It's like, or is it just a new way of like synthesizing it, in your life and through your life?
Yeah, I mean that instance, for those who have not watched that episode that we did from Costa Rica, we did 2 journeys or 2 experiences with the psilocybin. The second one, I had this huge feeling of forgiveness, forgiveness from others, and forgiveness for others, and then forgiveness in myself for things that I had done um, in my life. And I feel that I am still benefiting from that level of forgiveness in my life. I will say that I am microdosing with psilocybin regularly. I take 100 milligrams 5 times a week, and I feel that has helped to carry that compassion for myself forward, that compassion that I had for myself after that retreat and after that specific experience. I've been able to carry it forward throughout my life and integrate it into my life now, and then the practice that I do regularly now with the mindfulness and meditation, my regular mindfulness meditation practice, integrating mindfulness into my daily life, and then a formal meditation practice on top of that all. I think it all works together to continue to really tie into the larger human experience, and that's where the forgiveness is continuing, the forgiveness for myself by myself, if that makes sense, and the forgiveness that I feel for others in the way that they may have wronged me, or even continue to wrong me. I mean, even things that I see today, I might have felt differently about them a year ago. I'm like, hey, you cut me off in traffic, and now I'm like, whatever. It's just a thing,
Yeah.
and I roll with it.
Right. Well, you just had your
Yeah.
car stolen, John, and you're like, okay, like, what's next? How do I get over this problem? Uh, yeah.
Roll with it.
And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts, Neil, on some of that, like, the openness that people experience, or what you've, like, what has been, because I know and also a little bit later, towards the end, or even now, like, what is the Beckley process, if you will? Like, how do you run these retreats? And part of that running the retreats is integration process
Yeah.
afterwards, which is very important to bring home these insightful, like, epiphanies that you're having by having a lot of psilocybin in your body, but also creating a beautiful set and setting on the inside and the outside, and as a group.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that psychedelics can be good on their own, but they really should be used as a tool alongside of some of these other well-being practices, right? And I think meditation is foundational. Um, I really think that at the end of the day, uh, psychedelics can help you have better meditations, and that's why there's a lot of benefit there.
Yeah.
And for the retreats, yeah, I mean, we think about what we're trying to do. We're trying to up the standards kind of for the whole industry, because we think that if we make these programs more higher standards, have better preparation, better integration, have better long-term outcomes, then more people are going to give this stuff a try. Like people want to know that there's good standards and high, um, you know, world-class facilitators, and so we're doing that. And our programs are 11 weeks. Only a week is in person, 6 days in person, and so it starts with 4 weeks digitally, and that's a series of group calls where we kind of get the group dynamic started. That's important, right? Getting to know each other and realizing we're all in this together. And then we teach some of the basic well-being practices like meditation and some breathwork exercises, and we encourage some of this healthy habit change. Like if if you're in the upper in the morning, downer in the evening cycle, your central nervous system is likely really kind of out of whack. And like Will said earlier, you want to get the set and setting right outside, but you want to do what you can with mind-body alignment, and you want to get the central nervous system a little more settled down. So you want to come in with some ease. And then retreats are 6 days in person, beautiful location, deep in nature, and it's meditation, breath work, incredible food, some Western psychotherapy, some intentional time where we don't really have anything planned except hanging out and going to the beach or going to the river. And then we have 2 psilocybin ceremonies that usually last about 6 hours each. The first one, everybody gets their own custom dose, and some people, depending on their experience, their previous trauma, their current level of anxiety, they'll want to be a bit less, so we give them a bit less. It's a decision between them and the psychotherapist. And then some people will come in and they're like, let's do it, and so we go a little bit more. And then we really like having 2 ceremonies, because you can kind of, for people that want to, can have a little bit to step their toe in the first one. You can learn how to steer. You can see that it's not so scary. And then in the next one, we usually go a good bit more dose, again, based on individuals. And then, after the retreat, everybody goes home, and then we have 6 weeks of digital integration, which is a series of group calls again, and then some self-directed exercises and some of this Western psychotherapy stuff that's laying in the new patterns. And I mean, we're having really, really amazing positive feedback and outcomes, because I mean, I think you can get benefit from just a retreat, but like the way we're doing it, I think you can get a lot more that's going to last longer. And we're going to study this. We're going to use data, and we're going to make sure that our hypotheses are true, but it's looking good.
Yeah, I went through that 6-week program after the first retreat, and it put me in this apartment. Like I sat and I meditated, and a big part of our retreat was finding and accessing your future self, and who you want to be. How do you get there? What do you need to do? And like, what is that vision? And I sat in meditation, these visual meditations, these guided meditations that were part of the 6 weeks program. And I would just see this place over and over and over again in my meditations. And then, it's funny how you just put out the positive vibe into the world, and these medicines help us to connect to that frequency in some ways. It's very strange, but it does make a difference. But if you sit, you can really see it, and living from that heart space, I feel, makes this possible. Like where I'm living right now, it makes this possible because I'm connecting into the world in a way that, like, part of its own frequency. So it was a great integration process, and I'm so glad we're talking about this today, because I want more people to have these experiences. John is taking deeper risks. John just bought a truck. John got a bigger office. You know what I mean? Like, we're stretching because of it. We started stretching, because, like, fuck it. You know what? Like, there's some sort of higher source out there. And that helps us just to, when we come from that loving place, stuff could really start to move and change.
So for Neil, when is your next retreat? Where is it? And for the audience down below in the Beckley Retreats email and website that you can sign up and find out more information. And for those listening, I'll put that out here shortly. But Neil, when is the next retreat? Where is it?
Well, our next one is in Amsterdam at the end of August, but that one's sold out. And then we have some in Jamaica starting in October. And then we have some in November. One of them sold out already.
Wow.
And then we have a one in December. So if people want more information, email. And I love talking about this stuff. So I'm happy to get on the phone and chat with folks if they'd like to. So let's get some more folks down. It'd be great.
Let's go, man. And Will and I will be joining you at some point again in the future. Yes. I know it, just because of how powerful the experience was last time, but also because we enjoy hanging out with you, Neil. So thanks so much thanks so much for being with us today. Will, you got more?
No, I gotta say, there's nothing better than doing mushrooms and hanging out with you guys. I gotta we could do it again. And I mean that like in like fun and funny, but it's just like it's wow. There's a bond that happens, and it's beautiful. So
indeed.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there's anything else, but I really thank you for sharing your story, Neil, and sharing what's happening with Beckley, and info@beckleyretreats.com, info@beckleyretreats.com if you want information, and beckleyretreats.com, www.beckley retreats.com for more information, and join this growing movement, because it's only getting bigger, and nice to have someone like you, Neil, on the show that's leading the forefront of this revolution.
We're going together.
Yeah, we certainly are.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys enjoy this video. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Bye.